We've probably all daydreamed at some point about what life will be like in the future. Whether you're optimistic, shimmering cities, hoverboards and robot assistants, or pessimistic, pollution, 3D advertising and robot overlords. Well, the future won't be quite like any of those. It will be dominated by challenges such as climate change, the ever-increasing population and artificial intelligence.
Food contributes about a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions. The demand for food is increasing. By about 2050, there's going to be a demand of about 50% more food. And at the same time, the greenhouse gas emissions from the food choices we're making is actually getting larger. And so as we reduce the emissions from other sources, for example by switching to clean energy sources, food is going to be an increasingly large part of the greenhouse gas emissions problem.
Greenhouse gases are produced naturally in soils, in virtually all soils throughout the world. So these are gases that are produced by microbially driven processes, particularly the production of nitrous oxide, methane and carbon dioxide. What agriculture does is increase the production of those greenhouse gases, and that's because we add fertilizers to soil, which are a source of nitrogen, which can be broken down into a gas called nitrous oxide. We often plough the land, which can increase the production of CO2, and we can change the plants that are growing in ecosystems, typically in cropping systems, to a monoculture of crops, and that can also affect the production of greenhouse gases.
The food that's consumed most often that has the highest greenhouse gas emissions is beef. So when cows eat, the calories per day is about 40,000 calories for each cow, and about 6% of that is actually turned into methane. And methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So we wanted to really get a feel for the greenhouse gas emissions from different food choices. So we calculated the greenhouse gas emissions from 50 grams of beef, 50 grams of chicken and half a tin of beans. And we wanted to blow up balloons to match the equivalent volume of carbon dioxide that would be going into the atmosphere from producing each of those foods. It's good to really get a sense that the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent is really depending massively on the food choices we're making. So there's lots of different technologies that we can try to employ to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. One of the problems is bringing fruit and vegetables from overseas by air. But if we can grow the vegetables and fruit locally using, for example, what's called vertical farming, where we can grow crops using lighting indoors, the progress that's going on now with producing meat-like alternatives, maybe even cells grown in the lab, which really taste and feel like meat. So there's really potential for some really quite creative solutions to this challenge. Now, all these technology fixes alone are not thought to be enough to solve the problem. So in terms of consumer decision making, then consumers are going to have to change their choices compared to where we're currently on track for. And that's where decisions about reducing the amount of animal products, eating more in season are going to be really important.
One thing that we're particularly interested here at Manchester is looking at the potential to manage grasslands in different ways, and in particular in ways that we can enhance the biodiversity of grasslands, which are very valuable ecosystems, and also to sequester carbon in soils. And this is drawing on well-established ecological principles, and I think there's an important message there as well, in that nature does a very good job at solving problems, and we can often look at the more natural solutions to these issues and apply those to agricultural settings.
I think if you actually tried to design the food which had the minimum greenhouse gas emissions, you might come up with something which was basically kind of grey goo, like in the science fiction films. So if we don't do something pretty sharpish about greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, that's kind of a threat for the future we maybe should think about. But in the shorter term, we can really do a lot by simply changing some of our food choices. It really can go a very long way to solving the problem.